What makes Gravity Forms so powerful and popular is the vast number of add-ons and other supported tools. And luckily, they've made it super easy to find and install add-ons right from the WordPress dashboard. If you go to Forms, Add-ons, you can find a list of all the add-ons available to you. This may depend on the plan, so what you see here may be different from what you see in your add-on tabs. Add-ons are broken up into two sections: the official add-ons, which are developed by the Gravity Forms team and sold through their plans, and then certified add-ons, which come from third-party developers that Gravity Forms have vetted. These may come at an additional cost. They are described on the Gravity Forms website as long-standing members of the Gravity Forms community, trusted, valued, and respected. When you click on a certified add-on, it will take you to the vendor's website where you can purchase the appropriate license. For official add-ons, you can find and install them right in the dashboard. Let's do that right now with MailChimp. We'll locate the official add-on. The add-ons are listed in alphabetical order. And then we'll click the Install button. The add-on is downloaded to our WordPress site, and then we can click Activate Plugin. Once we do that, if we go to Forms Settings, we'll see a new section in Settings called MailChimp where we can connect to our MailChimp account. But we'll save that for later. To get a feel for Gravity Forms Builder, let's build a simple email contact form. We'll walk through the interface and create and configure a form allowing people to contact us. So first you'll want to go to Forms and then either Forms or New Form. We can also click the Add New button from the Forms screen. Clicking that will bring up a pop-up modal which will ask us to name the form. I will call this one Contact Me. Then we'll click Create the Form and we'll be brought to Gravity Forms Canvas where we can build out our form. We'll walk through all of the fields in another video, but for now, let's make a simple form with name, email, and message. Under the advanced fields, we can get some data-specific fields, including one for name and another for email. If we drag the name field onto the canvas, you'll see that we have a multi-field area which allows us to completely configure how the name is displayed. By default, we have first and last name, but let's go ahead and turn off last name. We'll also make this field required. Next, let's add the email field. Under Add Fields, we can also see that there's an email field under Advanced. We can place this directly under the name field, or we can use the Move button to add it next to the name field, giving us a two-column layout. I'll move it back under the name field. We'll also make this one required. We can also enable email confirmation so that they have to put in their email twice, but I'm going to keep that off. Finally, let's add the message field. Under standard fields, there is paragraph text, which provides the user with a big form field to type in a message. We'll drag that to the canvas, and you can see that because this is not a data-specific field, the field label is untitled. We'll call it message. We'll also make this one required. With our form built, let's click Save Form. Now let's configure the settings. If we hover over Settings, we can go to Form Settings. Here, this allows us to change the form basics, the layout for label placement and description placement, as well as if we want to have a validation summary, which will show a list of all of the errors at the top of the form. This might be good in case a user decides to not fill out anything. We can also change the required field indicator to text, an asterisk, or custom. I'm a fan of the asterisks. Then we can customize the form button so we can make this text or an image, and we can change the button text to something else if we'd like. Save and continue allows the user to save the form, and then Gravity Forms will email them a unique link for them to come out and fill it out later. And then we can put a number of restrictions on the form, limit the number of entries, schedule it for specific dates, or require the user to be logged in. We'll leave all of these unchecked. Finally, under form options, we can enable a couple of other things. The first is the anti-spam honeypot. We're going to turn this on to prevent spam bots from filling out our form. We can also create animated transitions and enable legacy markup, which we will leave off. Once we click Save Settings, we'll have our first form, which we can click the preview button to see. Gravity Forms has a ton of different simple and complex field types. Now that you have an idea on how to create forms, let's take a look at the types of fields you can add. As we go along, I recommend you add any field I cover that you might want to explore in a new form. I've created one here called the kitchen sink. First up is our standard fields. These are the most common form fields for single line or paragraph text, and then we also have multiple fields for selecting different options, like the drop-down field, which allows us to create a select list, radio buttons, which allows us to have the user select one from a list of many, or the checkbox field, which gives the users the ability to check all that apply. Some lesser known fields are the hidden field, which allow us to set data that the user can't see. Generally, this will be data that we want to include in the form submission. It allows us to name it and then assign a default field, which is unlikely to change. But we can also populate dynamic information like date, post and page title, URL, and lots more. The data can also be populated dynamically by passing information through a URL. The other fields here are HTML, which allows us to add HTML markup to a form, section, which creates a new discrete area of the form, and page, which allows us to create multi-page forms. We got to look at the advanced fields, but they're generally data specific. Things like name, date, time, phone number, address, email, and more. These fields have specific validation on them to make sure the data inputted aligns with what we expected. The CAPTCHA field requires us to integrate with the reCAPTCHA service and is used for spam prevention. ReCAPTCHA is like when you have to identify all of the boats in a grid of pictures. And finally, the consent field, which allows us to create a required checkbox with a message having the users affirm some information like they read the privacy policy or they agree to be added to the mailing list. The post fields are especially interesting. We'll take a closer look at these later, but they align with WordPress post data, allowing users to submit their own posts directly on the front end of our website. Finally, there are the pricing fields, which allow us to create a simple payment or commerce form. This is something that we will revisit later as well. Each of these forms also have their own settings in the Field Settings tab. We can change the name, description, field type, make them required, as well as change their appearance and allow them to be populated dynamically. There's also information for conditional logic. Gravity Forms gives you complete control over what happens when a user submits a form. Let's take a closer look and configure our contact form. From the contact form we created, we can go to Settings, and then first we'll go to Confirmations. Gravity Forms has two types of processing by default: confirmations and notifications. Confirmations are what the user sees on the screen after they submit. The default confirmation is simple text that is displayed for the user. You can also redirect to a page on your site and pass field data to that page, or you can create a redirect to a different URL completely. I highly recommend you customize this message no matter what you do. I personally like to create a separate thank you page, especially when I'm working with opt-ins. This gives the confirmation a little bit more personality and makes it a little bit more memorable. Here, we'll modify the text. So first we'll add some media. I'm going to upload a photo of me looking excited. I'll insert that into the post and then center it. And I'll make sure that we're using a nice big version of it as well. Now we do want to be mindful of loading times here, but that's a good size. And then underneath it, I will create a confirmation message. I'll make this a heading. And I'll write, hey, you did it. And then I'll add a new line that says, thanks so much. I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Then we will click Save Confirmation. Now this is what the user will see when they fill out a form. If we go over to the notifications, these are the emails that are sent when a form is submitted. And we can send the email to ourselves as well as to the user if they provide an email address. There is one default notification here, which is an email that goes to the administrator. So if we click on admin notification, first we'll notice a few things. First, we want to send to a specific email address. Admin email is a dynamic tag. We're going to leave the from name and from email address as the default values. And we want to do that because we need to enter an authorized email address to avoid deliverability issues. And it should really be the same as the site domain so that Gmail or any other email client doesn't mark it as spam. We also want to set the reply to email address here. I always like to set this to the user's email address. So if we click the dot icon, these are the merge tags. I'm going to add the user's email address. That way I'm not responding to myself if I write back to the email. Then we can change the subject. I always like to write the name of the site here. So I'm going to say TIL podcast. You can also add merge tags here. And then in the message area, you see there's a tag called all fields. This will generate a email client friendly table that lays out all of the fields that were submitted. We can also get more granular and customize the message using the merge tags on the right, but we're going to keep this the same because this format has been tested and we know it works well. One thing I will add to the bottom of this email address is the submission date, since we can do that here. So we can add the submission date. I'm going to add it in month, day, year format. And I'll say submitted on, and then the format. So this will add a submitted date to the bottom of the email. Then we'll click update notification and everything is properly set. Now, it is worth noting that if we are not using an email on the same domain, Gravity Forms does warn us using a third-party email address in the form field may prevent our notification from being delivered. And then it'll send us to a page talking about validating email deliverability. I strongly recommend this, as well as checking out this documentation, because mileage may vary based on your hosting company and email service, but email deliverability is a little bit outside the scope of this course. Now, we can also add other notifications as well as conditionally send them, but we'll take a closer look at that once we learn what conditional logic is.